everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sophie's Sofa. Today we have a very special guest. We have Maddi Brenner in the virtual sofa. So she's a great person. We actually met in Ireland and it was a great experience, probably one of the best experiences we've both ever had. And today she's going to talk to us about literacy and about libraries and about things that we don't really think about that people are interested in, and just explore that topic more. So thank you so much for being here, Maddi.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So first, tell me a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, how you decided to get into literacy and all that.
Sure. I'm 24 years old. I'm from the Chicagoland area. I did my undergrad at DePaul in Chicago. And then now I go to school at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. There, I'm getting a dual degree in library and information science and urban studies. So my focus is information and literacy, but also how that affects the public and the environment and users, specifically in the communities.
Perfect. And that's grad school, right?
Yeah.
So, and what did you study in undergrad?
I studied communications.
Okay, so graduating from undergrad, what was your journey? Did you say, okay, automatically I want to go to grad school, or did you start to apply to jobs and then you realized maybe you weren't applying to the right things, you wanted to learn more? So what was your thought process after you graduated?
To be honest, when I graduated, I went right into a corporate job and I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I guess I was confused when I originally graduated, but I felt like communications was such a huge space that I would be able to find something. But when I was in my job, I just felt like the work I was doing wasn't meaningful. I would come home at the end of the day and just be like, okay, so what exactly was my work working toward, especially for me and then also for the public? I've always had that really service-minded perspective. So I wanted to have how I engage in my work meaningful. So I was actually at a corporate job for a whole entire year. And during that time, I was kind of figuring out if I wanted to go into writing or things like that. And then, ironically, I read a book called The Library Book by Susan Orlean. And it was all about the LA Public Library and how in the 90s, 80s, it was a couple years ago, so I don't remember exactly, but there was a fire that happened in the library, and pretty much it completely destroyed all of the books, all of the literacy, and it also destroyed the community because the library is a huge impact on the community, whether you believe that or don't even know it or not. And so through the whole book, she takes us through how the library really prospered after that and grew into the library it is today, with collection development, gaining funding from the government and also from the people of the community. And so all of that just really inspired me because I've always been a literate individual. When I was little, I would always stand at the edge of the driveway and wait for the bookmobile to come down my neighborhood, and I would get really excited.
We don't have that in Miami.
What?
We don't have that in Miami. That's so.
Oh, you don't have a bookmobile?
No, I've never even heard of that.
That's well, it's like a truck full of books, and they go through different neighborhoods. I'm sure there's probably a few.
There has to be, maybe just not my neighborhood or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what?
You've always liked reading growing up.
Yeah. And so I guess when I thought of a librarian, I was like, oh, it's just somebody who loves to read, somebody who's engaged in literacy and likes to learn about fiction, kind of more of an English type of role.
Okay.
Like Shakespeare and all those older type of styled books. And so when I read that book, and then I started looking at library and information science degrees online, and I realized that it was way more than a literate book. It was how information is accessible to people and just how you process information and research it and find it and then also how you engage in that as a user and a community member. Yeah, there's like a ton about it.
So what would you say to, because going into this, like you said, you had a whole change of like heart, really, like just from, yeah, you
Yeah.
just got inspired. So what would you say in like today's society, how a lot of things are digital and a lot of things have like everything, our lives are on our phones.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you, like in the future with your new degree, once you graduate, how do you think that would affect you in a negative way, in a positive way? Like how would you tackle that with our society wanting to be so digital and not wanting to go to a library? Or how is the library evolving, if it is?
Yeah. So that's definitely a topic that we have a lot in my classes, because Google is like in its own right an information retrieval system. You're getting information while you're searching, like you're doing a query search on like what you're looking for.
Right.
So right now, a lot of libraries are looking at finding ways to apply their like data through how Google does it, where it's so simple and easy and manageable. And you'd be surprised, there's a lot of things that public libraries have that are like of pop culture and things like that. Ebooks. We have like hotspots that you can rent out if you don't have Wi-Fi at your house. Things like that.
Yeah, so I would say the library really is evolving just like every other industry is, because we are constantly needs more technology. So I didn't know that, like that you can get a hotspot. That's something people wouldn't know. So I think I would think the best way for us as a society to understand like the library systems and information systems better is to experience it and go to our local library. I don't know about you, but like here in Miami, or in my little suburb of Kendall, which is a little suburb in Miami, we only have like 2 libraries, and I've only gone once my entire life, and it was on a field trip. You know what I mean? So I think we have to do kind of a better job of having like introducing libraries to people and wanting and showing them that they can go whenever they want. So okay, so moving on to like the next little topic, how has quarantine affected libraries, would you say? To like an avid library goer, how has it affected them?
A lot. So there's a lot of different avenues of how it's affected the library. Just topical. So the library is not just like you purchase an item and then the customer leaves. It's an exchange of goods, and then typically you bring the goods back. Okay. So the returning process and the lending process is completely, I don't want to say shattered, but I mean, when you're getting a book back, you don't know where that book was. You don't know who touched that book. You don't know if someone sneezed on the book. I mean, these are always things that you're thinking about normally, but when you have a whole pandemic on like sickness and everything, you have to hold the book in its own quarantine for a couple days before you can even lend it back out. So our whole lending system is messed up, and our collection development is pretty messed up. So on top of all of that, you have community members who come there every day, people who are homeless, those who don't have Wi-Fi or technology to access the computer. They're really, really affected by it, because that's how they were able to even interact with like community as well, because they want to go on Facebook and stuff like that. I know that my library that I work at, we have increased our Wi-Fi proximity. So instead of it just sitting in the library, we've actually like managed it outside to like a farther surrounding area. But at the moment, that's really all we can do. There's not a lot of opportunity at the moment to just have people sit at the library, like sit inside it for a long extended hours. Yeah. And right now it's kind of at a standstill. The only opportunities we have is really digital technologies. So if you want an ebook or if you want music or video, you're able to access that, but you also need a phone, a smartphone to do those things. So it really does put a lot of people who don't have those resources at a disadvantage. And especially when you go to the library to find community, find books and literacy, it's really, really challenging for that.
Yeah.
We have a man who's homeless. He's been homeless for quite a long time, so he's chronically homeless. He came into the library every single day, and so it's been what, I think we closed in March. Now it's June, so it's been what, three-ish months. We're still closed in that sense.
Yeah.
So you just think about like people like that who come into the library every single day for a place to disconnect from their reality. And it's really sad and disheartening to think about, which is something that I've been trying to like wrap my head around, especially during like all the protests and things like that, what we're intentionally like putting our mind to when we're going about our everyday lives and have the freedom to do those things. And so when you work at the library, it's a very humbling experience, because you work with individuals who don't have access to things, or you work with people who have access to a bunch of things. I always like to say the public library is the place where all class levels, all races, all genders are able to connect. It's like the one place where like every single person in society has to come to, because like we can't reject or limit people from coming. So yeah.
I think that goes to like just people's happy place too. I think everyone has one. It's different. And so the way you just described the library, it could be the same way I could describe the gym for me. It's a place where no matter who you are, you're welcome there, and it's up to what you do in the gym is how you handle it, But there are many people who their happy place are libraries. I know so many people who read so much, and I just wonder how they do it, because I've never been a book person. Growing up, my favorite princess was Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and she loves to read. So I always struggle with like, I want to love reading, but I just can't like read for more than a minute. But whatever, that's beside the point. I read every now and then, like ebooks especially. So talking about like moving forward with the quarantine, like once everything's kind of the new normal, how do you see the world of libraries in the new normal?
It's interesting because I think the reason why people don't really, or people our age don't really use the library in that sense, is because they don't believe that it has like the technology that we need, or like the environment that we want. So I think I would hope that there's bigger push to be more digital focused. And I know there is in the library world and through like information science, but I would hope that down the line it becomes more of that. And then also, it is a place of community, but I think it could be more than that, than just books. I'm a progressive in that way. And I really do think it could just be a place where people go and sit and have coffee. But yeah, that's the goal. It's the challenging part is that libraries don't have a lot of funding. So without funding, you're not able to have like super high techy.
Right.
A lot of libraries have maker spaces. It really depends on what your library wants your maker space to be, but a lot of them are like recording studios, or prop centers, or places where you can like make videos and things like that, or do Photoshop. It's just a space where like you can be creative.
Oh, like a workspace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have those at the University of Miami library.
Yeah.
So
So exactly like
you
that.
rent it out. Yeah,
it's exactly like that, but it's for the public. So not everyone can afford like a Photoshop center, so it's nice for them to really enjoy that. And I think that's kind of what the future of libraries are going to be more so like. Just
That's a
hopefully.
great idea too, especially people who maybe work from home or people who just don't have a steady office. You know, like a lot of jobs nowadays, people can do from their phones or their laptops or whatever. So personally for me, even right now, like if I'm editing a video, as much as I can edit at home, I work better when I'm like in a space that everyone's working around me. So I go to a Starbucks, I go to a library and sit in the regular area. But thinking about workspaces, that would be a great idea for someone to get like a whole week's worth of work done in one day.
Yeah.
And I feel that's something I didn't know. And I think it's awareness with libraries because people just don't know all that it has to offer. And now I think with technology, using it to a library's advantage is like if your local library has an Instagram, it's like promoting posts saying, hey, we have workspaces, or hey, we just got these new computers, like things like that, so people are aware, because if not, no one's gonna ever find out. So I think using technology to the advantage to bring people into, just like any business in a way. I mean, that's what you have to bring awareness to what you can do.
Our number one reference call is, do you have a study space? So
Yeah,
makes sense.
it makes sense, and it works perfectly. So with libraries being a place where people can educate themselves and people can read, and even you can, I don't know if for there, but for our library, we can look up books and look up electronic resources through like the library online. And so what would you say that with the library that you're working at, people can educate themselves on very important topics? And I want to cite over to like Black Lives Matter, because anyone could just Google search it, but there's so many different opinions. And I think especially right now, everyone has to be educated the right way and with the right resources. So how would you go about telling someone to educate themselves on Black Lives Matter? Like what's the best resources, the best path for that?
Sure. So every library does have a catalog. So at UWM, that's an academic library. So you're going to have really, really more intense research articles and scholarship and that type of stuff. So at the public library, you're just going to get like an open face, OPAC system. It's just an information retrieval model. That's a lot easier to use. They don't have a ton of filters and all that stuff. So most of the time, if you're looking for that type of stuff, you'll be able to like access that through just like a search query. And so with public libraries, the librarian is the one who builds those collections. So not every library is going to have the same type of books, as I'm sure you know. And that's due to how the librarian works through their own collections. So this is hard to describe. So when you have a librarian who's more critically engaged in wanting to educate their users, their public, you're going to get a more plethora of books than you are if someone who is more of a traditionalist. And that's something that in library school we are trying to really work and challenge. The idea of being neutral on topics and being able to take a stance on like what your collection development is. Because neutrality means having books that don't really work for political like matters, things like that. But when you don't take a neutral stance, then you have books that are more engaged in topics that need to be said and need to be heard. And I think when you have a librarian like me who's 24, and then you have a librarian who's like 60, our ideas are so different and like what we want to give to the public. So it's really, as being a librarian, it's not just having your own opinion on something, but it's also recognizing that you have to house books for the individual who's 60 and then the individual who's 24 and is interested in Black Lives Matter. the cool thing is that there are library systems that have where you can get a book from another library. So if you don't find the book that we have, you can get it from another library, and they bring it to your library and you can pick it up. So that's something that's really cool if your library is more of like on a traditional conservative sense.
Right.
And if you want a book that's more progressive. And that's something that I think libraries are struggling with, the idea of really making sure you're engaging your whole entire audience, because you want to make sure that trans individual comes into the library and knows they can have a safe space and like talk to their librarian about something that they feel uncomfortable with. But you also don't want to like discredit someone who may be more on a conservative side, who may not really know like the ideas that they want to pursue. So it's like finding that balance between making sure that every single user at your library has something to look forward to. Yeah. And so it's a big like balancing act when you do collection development and what you're trying to portray to the library. The library field, there's about, I think it's like 84% of our staffing, this is a statistic over like nationally, are white individuals, female white individuals, and there's about 6-ish% Black individuals who are librarians. And the most important thing, I think, for a library is to have staffing that is diverse and inclusive, because when you have a plethora of white individuals, then how you portray and educate is going to be different than how a Black individual portrays and educates. And that's something that
it also affects the people that come in, correct? Mm-hmm. Because then I feel like only a certain type of person will feel welcome, you know, depending on who the librarian is. So I think as a person who isn't working in the librarian's like system, you'd feel more welcome at a place where you see people who are like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we are taking steps and things to get to those places, but I mean, it's not going to come overnight, but the hope is that they are being tackled. I'm going to be going to a conference on how to tackle Diversity Day using anti-racist policy, and also just like uplifting those who are Black and are in the librarianship field. They have a lot to say critically on how white librarians use their development and how they like respond to things. And so I think just even having that dialogue, like I think, like I obviously am white, but I think when you recognize that you are, but you want to like make that space, that's the first step in choosing to make a more inclusive space. That's the first step, recognizing that you have that responsibility to do that. So yeah.
Awesome. I completely agree with everything you said. And I think it's really important is what you just said about realizing your privilege and then using that to your advantage. So a lot of people don't use it to their advantage. So it's a touchy subject, but I hope for our world, for our nation, for our communities to kind of move forward in that sense, because I know there's a lot of it's a divisive nature right now with our country. And I think it comes from a place of being really educated or not being educated at all. And that's where there has to be that center balance of knowing a little bit of everything on both sides. So looking at yourself, your future down the line, let's say 5 years from now, what would you say is your ideal job, your ideal day to day, where you kind of would say that you feel like you're making a difference, you come home from work every day like proud and accomplished? What would you say that life is for you?
I think the one thing to point out is it's definitely okay for me to say something that I want to do, but then like completely switch it if I want to. That's the beauty of librarianship and information. You can go into the corporate world, or you can go do whatever, all that stuff. So I think right now I want to do academic librarianship, because I love research. I love learning more. And at the academic university, you can really like access and hone in on research skills and help other students focus on their research, especially graduate students. So that's kind of where I want to go down the line, and then eventually become a professor and get my PhD in it. But right now I do work at the public library. So I do enjoy working with the public and being like a resource for individuals and connecting with them on a more personal level rather than just giving them the resources. So at the moment I'm indecisive, but yeah, that's where I see myself. I feel like either way, I probably will enjoy it a lot because it's meaningful.
Of course. And that's like, I think every person strives to have a job that is meaningful, that they can get home and say that they made a difference in some way or another. And I think even though right now you say you're like indecisive or whatever, as long as you have some type of end goal and range of things that you can do, then there's so much possibility. There's so many paths you can take. It doesn't matter which path you take. It's just, that's the end goal. So I have no doubt in you. Like you'll find your path, and a couple years from now, you'll be successful. I know it. And I'll be there visiting you in Chicago, hopefully.
I think for me, I really want people to be aware of like libraries and how information is even received, especially now because of the whole politics and the election that's happening this year, like fake news and all of these things. They're information coming at you, whether you're retrieving or whether you're like wanting it or not. It's still information coming at you. And I just want people to be aware of how you're getting the information and processing it and educating yourself on it. And then also at libraries, they're really cool and everyone should come.
I think you should definitely use to your advantage social media right now, because to be honest, I've been surprised as like me going on Twitter, for example, and how many posts of articles are going up, how many people are educating someone else. And it's a great platform. So is Instagram, is of course, but Twitter is more of like that one where you can go back and forth about like topics. And I think you, Maddi Brenner, should really use social media to your advantage of educating people and what you want them to know about libraries and what you want them to know about how they should learn, how they should educate themselves through social media, because that's the way to get to people our age. I really think so, because nowadays, like, no one watches TV, no one goes to libraries apparently, so you got to go to the place that it counts and then redirect them.
Yeah. If you guys are curious more on like critical librarianship, there is a Twitter hashtag. It's called CritLib. And they just, if you go on there, there's a lot of, right now it's a lot on like the Black Lives Matter movement and how that affects just information science and libraries and stuff like that. But it is a really good resource to understand just like how much the library is in your daily life, whether you like it or not.
That's a great note to end on. All right. So thank you so much, Maddi, for coming on Sophie's Sofa. I hope to see you very soon, and I'll stay updated with your journey. And everyone follow her on Instagram. Her handle's right under her. And also on Twitter, go ahead and follow the hashtag CritLib. Is that what it's called? CritLib. Okay. I'm going to do that as soon as we finish this call. So thank you guys again for watching, and thank you, Maddi, for coming on. See you guys next time. Bye.